there, my name's Jill Tiny. I'm from Collaboration Global, and this is our podcast, Being Human, Hidden Depths. I'm going to be interviewing some of our members from Collaboration Global, and they're going to be sharing with you their extraordinary lives. Although they would probably believe they're just normal, everyday, average humans, but they are extraordinary. A bit like you and me. We all have our story to tell. We've all been through difficult times, and we've come out the other end having learned an extraordinary amount about ourselves that we can share with others. So I think you'll find lots of things that will resonate with where you've been in your journey as well. I look forward to seeing you on the other side. Hello and welcome to Being Human, Hidden Depths with me, Jill Tiny, and our wonderful guest, Jessie Fraser. And I say guest because normally this podcast is gifted to our members to show off about the stuff they do. And every so often you come across someone that kind of intrigues you, and we're on the same page, but we're different. We're so different, and yet we have similar passions. So Jessie, welcome to Being Human Hidden Depths, and thank you for being a guest on this podcast that we can explore. And I want to share with our audience how amazing you are.
Well, thank you. I appreciate the opportunity for sure. Thank you.
So Jessie and I didn't realize, but we've kind of been following each other around, I think, online, part of the ACN Arts and Culture Network and various other things. And what I love about you, first and foremost, is you are an artist. I'm always slightly jealous of artists because as much as I love art, I've never actually done art. And whenever I've done art, it's never like, oh, it's not good enough. I always feel like, oh, I'm not that clever. But I admire you guys immensely. Whether it's a musician or whether it's somebody that's a sculptor or a painter or a dancer, or it's that creativity within you that has to get out. So I'm going to ask you, how old were you when you first thought that's your thing? I'm going to be good at that. When was the first time? Do you remember?
I actually do. It's a really fun story, actually.
Excellent.
When I was 3 years old, I used to play with clay around my dad. My dad always had clay around, and he would give it to me to keep me busy so he could work on his stuff. He was a craftsman. Oh. And so I would play with that. Well, I was drawing a picture one day because I would doodle a lot too. And I apparently gave my cousin, who is older than me, a picture. And it was just a smiley face with like arms sticking out of the ears and legs sticking out of the chin. And I signed it. And I told her that she needed to hold on to it because I was going to be a famous artist someday.
Oh, wow.
And yeah. And what's really funny is she's 10 years older than me. So she was 13 when I gave it to her. And I moved in with her when I turned 20 and she was 30. And she came into my bedroom after living there for a week and she says, "You want to see something funny? I found this in my underwear drawer." And she pulled it out and it was the picture. She still
how lovely.
Yeah. So I told her to fold it back up and put it back away. And
it's going to be very valuable one day. Oh, that's lovely.
Yeah.
So
yeah, that's kind of cute.
When I asked you the other day, what's your favorite medium? It was sculpting is your thing. How did you get into that?
Well, like I said, my dad used to give me clay all the time when I was a kid. And by the time I got into high school, they had actually a really good ceramics class. So I just did ceramics every chance I could all through my entire high school career and made studio and was making dishes and all that stuff. So it started really as a potter. And then when I got out of school, there's that, the Fimo clay that you can bake in the oven.
Right.
Have you ever heard of that stuff?
No.
Well, I didn't have a kiln or anything to do real clay. So you can get this like plasticine. It's not plasticine. It's just like bake in the oven clay. And it comes in a bunch of different colors. Well, I got obsessed with it, and I would make these little characters that were real small and super detailed, like aliens and that kind of stuff. And I really got into that in my 20s. And then by my 30s, I started making bigger sculptures and learning how to actually do the whole process of casting and molding and all. So it's super fun.
Wow. So you don't, I mean, you hear stories about Rodin when he was talking about not creating the person from the marble, but the marble, the person was inside the marble and he was letting them be released. Is that, can you identify with that?
Absolutely. It's almost bizarre how it happens because, especially when you're sculpting, it's really hard to plan things out. I mean, you can, but I've never been an artist that my planned artwork has never come out the way I've planned it. So I have just learned to just release whatever expectations I have and to just do what I feel needs to be done. And it's really funny. I've actually had sculptures, like especially like busts of heads, where I've gone a certain direction, and then all of a sudden been like, nope, and I just completely redo the whole thing, and it turns out amazingly much better than how it started. And it's just something that it's almost like you're meditating while you're sculpting. Like there's no thoughts, it's just you're quiet in this quiet
Mm.
space and you're just allowing this to flow out of you and just become what it becomes. And every little moment of it is just an instinctive impulse. um, and I think that's what I love about art in general, is that the one thing that you can create where you actually don't have to think about it, you just have to allow it to
Mm.
happen. And that's how I do my paintings too. And I it's so fun for me and relaxing. And then when I get done, because I didn't plan it, there's always this kind of
Right.
message within it that I get to reveal to myself, which I think is very interesting.
That's fascinating. Because you talk as well about mindfulness and how that art can support you in that need for mental health. And I was watching a TV program we've got over here in the UK called The Piano. And basically, they've shoved pianos into train stations and they get people to just come and play. And the ones that are really good, they put on a concert at the end of the series. But everyone that plays has got this story of how they came to the piano and what it means to them. And all of them have this connection, this internal, intrinsic connection to, and some of them, one guy learnt to play on paper. He didn't have a keyboard, but he learned how to play the keys and notes and everything. And then when he got a keyboard, it was an amazing story. And they're kind of they have this sanity because they have the piano. All the problems of the
Yeah.
world are going on out there, but they have the sanity because they can be themselves with that piano. There was
Yeah,
even a girl that was
absolutely.
blind and deaf, and she was able to play the piano as well with her teacher. And I get that with art. I get that with, I mean, for you, you don't know any different because from the age of 3, you were doing this. And you know,
Right.
when you're in this space, you go, oh, I feel okay. I'm stressed. I need to go and find some clay. I'm going to go and work, or I need to
Yeah.
paint, or whatever it is. But there are a lot of people out there, like myself, did it at school, thought I had to be perfect and didn't quite get there. Love it, but don't know how to do it. But what you've just
Hmm.
explained, I don't need to do it. I just need to be it. And
Hmm.
that's kind of what you're translating now into the workspace, aren't you? Where people are having access to being. And in the world that we live in, where we are all stressed and anxious and suffering from mental ill health, it's a conduit to have that moment of peace. So
Absolutely.
so from where you were sitting as a 3-year-old and you've gone through and it's part of your life and given you sanity, are there times in your life when you've gone, I need this now? Or have you ever sort of been away from your art where you've not realized that you needed it until you went back to it afterwards?
Oh, absolutely. I've always been in a creative field. I started being a graphic designer when I was 19, and going through my life, I was a designer and then a design consultant, and then I was a photographer, and own my own photography business. Like I've always been like in the creative industry somehow. But when it came to my personal artwork,
Mm.
There was a huge chunk of time when especially when I owned my photography studio, that I did not do personal art because my personal art was my photography, and I was working with entertainment in the entertainment industry, so I was photographing bands and doing promotional photos for them, and working with other performers and stuff like that. So it was a very creative job.
Yeah.
So I didn't paint and I didn't sculpt in that time frame, and um, something really devastating happened. I was in a passive domestic violent relationship,
Wow. Yeah.
and I started getting physically ill. And I had also stopped meditating in that time frame of
Mm.
me dating him. I stopped meditating,
Wow.
and when you're not meditating and you're not doing artwork, and I've been doing that since I was 15. I actually started that kind of establishment when I was very young,
Mm.
due to my upbringing. And my dad was always like, just be yourself, just be you, don't be anybody else, just be Jessie. So I've always been Jessie
It sounds
and Jessica, you know. Yeah, so it's been good. But in that time, I totally just, because it was my daily job to be super creative and come up with all these ideas, I kind of let all that stuff go. But it wasn't actually fulfilling that need of meditation and or creative outlet in a way that was not um, purposely driven, right?
Mm.
So when you're doing it as a career, it's a purposely driven
Yeah.
thing. And unless you get yourself out of that mind state to see things in a different way, um, you're kind of just stuck in that purpose driven way, and my artwork kind of opens up to make it not be purposely driven in that sense. Like in a business sense, it's just like a spiritual connection, right?
Mm.
So when I was really sick, and I one day was like, I was in a lot of pain, and I was like, I just gotta sit here and meditate for a little bit. And then after meditating for an hour, I realized I was not hurting as bad, and also got this immense drive to start painting.
Wow.
And over a 13-month period, I went from being, sick to being very ill.
Wow.
And I very, very, very ill. And I had a near death experience. I almost died. And I had neuropathy so bad that I couldn't hold a brush anymore, or a pencil. And I was still having this urge to paint, and I was taking things and making excuse me, making stencils of them so that I could use those to paint with, so I didn't have to hold a brush
Yeah.
to do it. And so I have a series of paintings that I did throughout the 6 years that I was ill. And
Jeez. Wow.
you can see the chunk where I was struggling, because they're they're completely different and as I went through this, I ended up healing from everything. I got the passive domestic violence out of the house, and away from everything, and I started healing from this. And it was a long haul heal, not just emotionally but physically.
Physically, yeah. So
And when
it
I
was your, sorry, it's your connection to art that kind of kept you going then, because for 6 years
absolutely,
to be not well and severely not well that you can't even pick up a paintbrush, you still
but
had
I
the
was still,
desire. That
I,
was your thing that kept you going. It's
yeah.
amazing.
Thank you. It was one of those things where, instead of just not thinking while I was painting, I was working through everything,
Yeah,
and just unconsciously painting.
yeah,
So as my mind was going through all the stuff to heal from it, emotionally and mentally, I was unconsciously painting at the same time. So, and then I would still meditate on the side to control my pain and to help my body heal. And when I would get done, the paintings all had these messages to them. And I have a whole series of, I think there's 33 now.
wow.
And they all tell their own little story of what stage of my progression and
Mhm.
my journey that I went through was at. And it's really funny because they all have kind of their own Like you can tell what section I'm in by the style of the painting. And as my neuropathy was healing, because I healed from my neuropathy, I have zero neuropathy anymore. And you can
Mm,
see that I'm getting more and more detailed and more and more detailed, and how everything kind of just shifted just automatically. And it was almost like an overnight situation too. It was very bizarre, but I'm very grateful for it. And my artwork was like kind of like my release. So I would put all these ruminating thoughts into them, and
mm,
then tell myself how I'd rather feel, or tell myself what I'd, you know, if this is happening to me right now and I'm acknowledging it, but after I'm done with this painting, this is how I'm going to feel about it. And it was just this like almost unconscious thing that I was doing, and
mm.
very instinctive. But after finishing the painting, I would never think about it again. And when somebody would bring something up or ask me about something that was emotionally, um, normally triggering to me, it didn't trigger me anymore. It seriously was the most bizarre, beautiful thing that's ever happened to me.
It's like you kind of washed yourself of
Yeah.
the emotion in a good way. It cleansed yourself, isn't it? It's like going into water and just coming out cleansed from what the past was. What can you look back now, detached from those images and those pictures that you did, and kind of chart oh, that's when I found out about that, and that's when I realized why I was ill, and that's when I realized I could get better. Can you see them all?
Absolutely.
Wow, that's
Yeah.
fascinating.
And what's really fascinating about it is, when you talk about a healing journey, it involves like people call it enlightenment, right? You're in this enlightenment journey, and it's not linear. So what's happening now that I've been out, that I'm healed, my body's healed, my mind is healed, I feel amazing. I just want to live my life and be happy, and I am happy. I'm finding like joy in the smallest little tiny things, and it's so beautiful.
Mm.
But what I have my paintings hung up around my house, and it's so funny now because I walk by them and I'm seeing them from like the top looking down, and
Yeah.
all of the things that I learned from this painting to this painting are now all of a sudden correlating together in a different way. So I'm seeing a new meaning within the original that
Hmm.
was down here to what it relates to me now that I'm up here. So it's like you get this whole new different perspective
Mm.
of everything. And it's really, really interesting. And what's beautiful about it is just the knowing of the state of my consciousness, and the state of my healing, and knowing that I could actually teach this to people. And that's been like the coolest part about it, is that this is totally something that is teachable. Not only is art teachable, like anybody can do art. Even if you think you're not creative, that's not true. I mean, we're human. We're humans. We're born to create things. I mean, that's all we do is
Yeah.
create things. If you really think about it, whether it's building a house or plumbing or whatever, you're still
Cooking
creating
dinner.
it. You're
Yeah.
building it.
Yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely.
like it's however your brain is wired for you to create how you create, but you're still creating it, and it's just a skill. So you can totally learn that skill, and and being able to like think in the way that promotes you learning that skill is like so important. And then you add the other layer of knowing how to do it to help you get through a stressful situation
Mm.
or anything that you could possibly be going through. That just makes it that much better. And it doesn't have to be like it doesn't have to be like a huge psychological process of like analyzation. You know what I mean? Like you don't have to analyze yourself in order
You
to
don't have to
do
sit
it.
in a psychiatrist's chair to work.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. You know, and I think I mean, it's important because some people feel that, they need to talk and talk and talk and talk. And sometimes you do, you just got to get it out.
Mm.
But there's other ways of doing it where you don't have to relive all of that stuff.
I think as well, when you're doing something with your hands, whether it's something that's going to go on a wall or something that's going to be thrown away and never looked at again, when you can absorb yourself in it and your mind can stop doing the chatter, like it's like a meditation, isn't it? And you just get absorbed in what you're doing without judgment of like, oh, that doesn't look very good. It's just totally without judgment. That's why clay is so lovely because you can mold it and manipulate it. That in today's world is kind of what's missing because in politics, I mean, we're both and we had a little chat about politics last time we got together, but in this world at the moment where politicians are, doing their job and not very well, shall we say, that if they want to cut anything, cut budgets, and they look out there, it's like it's the arts budget that's always cut first, isn't it? It's like, oh yeah, we don't need theatres, we don't need music venues, we don't need galleries. Yeah, we do, because otherwise we're going to go crazy. Look at the world around you when you take all those things away. And it's just so important. So you talk about you go into businesses, don't you? And on the first instance, I'm like, oh, actually, she's a sculptress and she's an artist and she goes into businesses. Okay, how does that work then? But if you want to go into a stressful situation, you can't go far wrong to go into a 21st century business and see the stress that's in every single person. For what goals have they got? It's driven. It's we've got to beat the market. We've got to get a new market target audience. We've got to, and it's all very, very, no, not many people skip to work, do they really? And you
I
and you
mean,
go
that's
in and you give them that opportunity to see a different way.
yeah, because it's in today's like environment. I don't know how it is in the UK, but in America, you have like two different levels. You have the level of new business that understands new ways of thinking, right? And they understand that genuine authenticity that needs to be in things that are actually innovative, and they need to be intuitive, and they, especially with anything that has to do with like software development or the internet or websites or any of those things, they have to be intuitive for the mass. But at the same time, like, you can get tunnel vision, and then you have the older companies that have been around a long time that are trying to keep up with new technologies and everything. And maybe they're keeping up with new technologies, but they're not keeping up with the new social norm that is what today's environment is, at least in America, where we're wanting to be able to be ourselves. We're wanting to be able to take care of our families and not make work our lives, and those are the businesses that usually struggle when it comes to innovation, because their people are burnt out, and or they don't have the time or the ability needed to be able to do any kind of free flow mindfulness at work, to get those natural instinctive epiphanies that just happen when you are in a certain state of mind. And that's kind of what I like to do when it comes to business, because I've been in the entertainment and the creative industry for so long. And people say entertainment is art and music and all this stuff is entertainment, but it's really not. It's soul. It's like it's soulful. It's something that is necessity to be able to function as a human person creating anything. And regular businesses that are outside of the industry, the creative industries, still need help innovating and help like producing these things. So, and they usually tend to be, in a state where they don't feel creative. They don't think that they are creative, and they're creative in ways that I'm not creative, and you might not think that that is a creative thought, but the way you're going about it, whether it's, engineering or even accounting, you can take any business and there's a creative problem solving thought process that creates whatever you're setting yourself up for your goals. And I can go in and help facilitate getting you in that right mindset so that it's easier for you to come up with those new brilliant ideas and those new innovations. And we have kind of a weird situation in the US right now where millennials were not really taught creative thinking processes in school.
Right.
So there's a ton of people that don't think they're creative, and
Yeah.
they absolutely are. I'm a firm believer that everybody's creative in their own right, in their own specialty, because you almost have to be. It's just, you don't think of it as creativity, but it really is. And it's just, it might not be artistic, but it's
Yes,
still
that's the
creative
difference,
nonetheless.
isn't it? And I think a
Yeah.
lot of companies nowadays, this is massive generalization, sweeping statement here, apologies in advance, but there are a lot of larger companies that have the toxic work environment because they don't believe they have the space to let people think for themselves and be innovative. It's all about, well, they're in competition with them and they're in competition with them. And the marketing guys don't want to talk to the sales guys because they never do it properly. And they really should be talking to each other, but they don't know how to communicate effectively. So they'll get a communication consultant come in and teach them. Or maybe if they're trying to be a little bit left field, they'll say, let's have an away day and we'll take the whole team out on a, running up a mountain and getting on a raft across a river, and everyone gets wet and nobody wants to do it. And it's just really, but that's team building. So once the team has been built, and everything's gonna be okay after that. Or is it really? I don't think so.
I mean, it's part of it, but it's not the entire answer, right? I mean, it all has to come together, and maybe that's stage one of them opening up
Yeah.
to having like this kind of situation where you allow time to make mistakes, you allow time, and you don't punish people for making mistakes. So many companies,
Yeah.
they punish their employees for making mistakes when maybe that mistake was made due to needing it to happen.
Mm.
And especially in like the design industry, you have to be able to have that space to make mistakes
Oh,
and
goodness,
to
yeah.
experiment. Experimenting is so huge. And I like to have these sessions with leadership teams so that and if they want their smaller teams to be involved, I'm totally for that too. But the leadership teams are the ones that actually need the training so that they know how to inspire the teams
Yeah.
below them and the people that work for them to be, genuine with themselves and to feel like themselves. Because I think more and more people nowadays don't actually want to be someone else. They don't want to compete with someone else. They want to actually have support from
Mm.
their coworkers instead of competing against their
Yeah.
coworkers. They want to celebrate each other. They want, you know, to not be stressed out by having like there's a thing with being a little competitive, but there's a thing about, where it becomes a negative,
Mhm.
it can become a really negative force
Yeah.
when you're in a state of hard competition like that
It
in,
shuts
in
you
the
down,
workplace.
doesn't it? Because as soon as you're shut down, you're in this space of fear of making a
Yeah.
mistake, doing it wrong. So the idea of creativity means like I'm giving something of myself away and somebody might steal that. It's this scarcity mentality that's out there.
Mhm.
And it's like the Wolf of Wall Street, isn't it? There's all this intensity and, I'm the one that's going to be the winner and everyone else is going to be the loser. And actually, I think since the pandemic, we are in that space now of like, well, let's help each other. Let's see what we can create together. Let's come and collaborate and see how we can make a difference. And when two or three people come together with this mindset and heart set of collaboration, then the creativity comes out because you can't just say be creative. So, oh, well, hang on, I don't know. Yes, I'll be creative. It's like blank page. Write
Right.
something. What do I write?
Yeah,
And it's
exactly.
but when people have the open questions and the opportunity and go, okay, let's fly with this and see where that would go. And if you had all the money in the world, what would you do? If you had no money at all, what would you do? And just having that precious, precious time to be let off
Mhm.
the lead to do something without being restricted or fearful or concerned about what people are going to say about you and what people are going, how they're going to judge you. So many times in the business community, there is this judgment, this blame, because somebody's looking to put the rap on somebody else so they don't get caught. So it's very
Right.
rare that they feel free enough. And if you're in a place where you do feel free enough, then you're in a job that you probably love going to work every single day.
Or you probably like it better than, the other jobs for
Yeah.
sure.
Yeah.
You know, it's also the fact of being able to know how to flip a perspective.
Mm.
So, like one of the games that I like to play is I call it the MacGyver game. Do you remember the TV show MacGyver?
I love that show. Yeah, yeah.
Okay, so he could make anything out of anything, right? And he can
Yeah.
make it work. So what you do with the MacGyver game, and this would be my freebie for here, because this is super super important when you're trying to come up with creative problem solving.
Hmm.
Is I like to call it the brain sinker. Okay, so both hemispheres of your brain, you need both right and left to work together
Mm.
instead of focusing on one or the other. And so you kind of got to think in a way where they both work together. So what you do is you take an existing item, and I'll just take regular things from around the house or whatever, and I'll say, here's your MacGyver for the day. This is this one thing. How could you use this thing for another purpose,
Mm,
doing something really different than what it was made to do?
yeah.
And then you take two of the items and say, how can you make them together and use them together to make one thing, to do a thing that it wasn't, that neither of them were made to do.
Yeah.
And Steve Jobs used to do this all the time. And that's why he was brilliant, because he would take two things that were never meant to be together and he would put them together.
Yeah.
And he made some brilliant innovations due to doing that.
Yeah.
But, so that's just a really simple game that can change the game entirely in
Yeah.
your business.
Yeah.
Because when both hemispheres of your brain are working together and you are thinking creatively like that, and like seeing it from a different angle, that's when it just, because like I said, you get tunnel vision, or you get the blinders on the side, and you just go and you think that this is what my customers want, this is what they,
Yes.
and maybe
Yeah.
a little tweak to it could make something huge happen
Yeah.
that you've been struggling because you've been tunnel visioned on what it could do.
What's the phrase? If you've always do what you've always done, you always get what you always got. And so many people are stuck
Exactly.
in that road. But this has been working for the last 30 years. I don't understand why it's not working anymore. And it's having
Right.
something like that that can, as you say, I love it, tip the scales into something completely different. That's where Blockbuster failed, didn't they? They didn't innovate at the time in order to create something different and create a Netflix. They didn't see
Yeah.
it at that time.
Great
It's like they were
concept.
stuck in the rut, weren't they? I
Yeah.
know you said earlier that you've had a near-death experience, and I think people like myself are quite fascinated by this, people that have been through that space. And I wonder, one, if you don't mind telling us a little bit more about that experience, but also two, do you think that informs how you see the world now and how you can have these kind of tipping creativity spaces, because you can see that this is all kind of made up in a game anyway. This is, it's not the real thing. This is, so you can understand
It's
that,
what you make of
yeah,
it, is what it
let's
is. It's
try
what you make
something
of it.
different. Yeah, you're not stuck in the rut. So tell us a little bit more
Right.
about how it happened.
Well, I was very, very sick. I had been, my body was toxified. So when I um, when I had the near death experience, I basically had heart failure,
Wow.
and my heart stopped for 27 seconds. It wasn't that I was clinically dead, but it stopped for 27 seconds, and then I revived myself. Oddly enough, yeah. So I was not meant to go. It was not my time. But in after that happened, dreams, like everything, I was so sick that everything was just kind of like, what is reality? What is a dream? What is happening? There was a lot of that going on, and me just being utterly me in every way, shape, or form, just trying to get through it.
Yeah.
And in that process, I noticed these instinctual insights and epiphanies and things that I was doing, things to heal my body that I didn't even know why I was doing them. And I was so sick, I was just letting it happen. And it was this weird autopilot kind of thing where I
Yeah.
would crave certain things, or I would move my body in certain ways. I started belly dancing in my bed.
Okay. No, I was not
Yes.
expecting that. The new one.
Yeah, just weird. I mean, really weird, random stuff like that. And what it ended up being were these were the things that were actually working out the toxins from my body. These were the foods that were actually helping reestablish my organs and rebuild
Wow.
everything, and heal my heart and all of the stuff. And I think that the biggest lesson of all of it was just learning how to completely allow whatever needed to happen, and to follow and listen to my body
Mm.
more than my voice. So it got to a point where I was just naturally listening to my body so much that I would go into grocery stores, go directly to the organic food section, and I would hold vegetables to my chest and
Mm.
say, is this what my body needs? And then I would lean forward, and that was a yes. And if I leaned backwards, that was a no. And it was a very bizarre thing, but that allowing of this internal instinct
Yeah,
of healing, I think everyone is capable of healing themselves in any way that they, choose to, if they allow it to happen. And it's not like a pushed or forceful thing. And I think that's the thing, is so many people who are in a state of physical turmoil or emotional turmoil, you try to push it, and you're like, I just want to heal, I just want to heal, I just want to heal, think, and it was this thing where it was all this natural, instinctual, intuition, I would say. And I would meditate for 4 hours at a time. I mean, it was intense. I would get into this state of meditation to stop the pain, because I was in a
yeah,
lot of pain.
yeah,
And but that in because I was meditating for so long, I think that I was just kind of constantly at that state. Like, even when I would come out of the meditation, I was still kind of there.
yeah,
And being as sick as I was, um, but what that ended up doing was causing these instinctual insights and epiphanies and intuition on things that I related into the things that were like motivational. So, like, anything that was instinctual, it was emotional, it was motivated, and it would push me to do it. And my art and that kind of stuff was absolutely a major push. Like, there is just such a drive and motivation to do it.
mm,
And I didn't start realizing the process until I was probably two years into healing, and I was feeling a lot better, but I was still having intermittent problems. Like, once a month, I was having issues for like a week.
mm.
And one day I just said, why am I doing this? It like dawned on me that I was doing like just things so instinctively that I was like, how is this happening? and, and that got me on a whole new journey of like looking stuff up and researching stuff, and
Mm,
a whole slew of just data, because I wanted to know, well, what does this actually do? So then I would look up, okay, well, when you're doing this or this food, what does it
yeah,
actually do? Like, what are
yeah,
the benefits of this food? What are the benefits of these movements?
yeah.
And it turned out half the movements I was doing instinctually were Qigong movements that I didn't even
Mm.
know that I knew.
Yeah, that's interesting, isn't it? I mean, as you probably know, we have a Qigong master in our community, Alessandro Furlow, and the stuff that he has taught me over the years is just so beautiful, because when you do have those quiet moments, and you do, it makes sense to, raise your hands to the heavens, and ground yourself in the earth, and all of those. There are so many things that are instinctual, but we get it knocked out of us. That's the wrong expression, but because of the white men in coats, and because of the
Mhm.
prescription, and because of the drugs that we're told will cure us, we use that as a first port of call instead of the last port of call. And we
Yeah,
forget how to heal ourselves. And there are so many ways that we can do it. And
absolutely.
we forget the things that our ancestors learned, whether it's the herbs or the tinctures or the ways that we can support ourselves. We had a lady on, Nicolette Richer, who talks about eating real to heal. An
Mhm.
amazing book she's written. I absolutely loved it. But she talks about a team of people that look after you. She said it's not just a doctor, it's your osteopath, it's your hypnotherapist, it's your acupuncturist, it's your herbalist,
Mhm.
it's your all these things. You're like, yeah, you're right. It's all of these people who are specialists in a particular area can add another thing into making you better for whatever ails you. And when you just go to one person and get chemicals, it kind of goes against the grain for, nature healing you, because nature is built to heal us. We've got all we need in nature, but it's just knowing where to go and how to get it. I'm not saying there aren't drugs out there that are great. You know, I got
Well, of course, I would never ever tell anybody not to go to the doctor if they had to go
no,
to the doctor.
no,
The
absolutely.
only reason that I took matters into my own hand is due to it being a passive domestic violence situation. Every doctor that I saw and asked for assistance told me that they didn't want to get involved because they did not want to be a part of a lawsuit.
Ay, ay, ay.
So I did not have medical support. They
Hmm.
did not want to help me whatsoever, and also it could be considered a pre-existing condition. Therefore, they didn't want to document it; they wanted to treat it. So every time I went to the doctor or the hospital due to my pain, they didn't want to document why
They
I
treated the
was
symptoms and not
hurting.
the cause.
They were treating the symptoms and not the cause. And it was really funny. My last time I went to the doctor, he was like, and because I was seeing multiple different doctors, and I don't have a regular doctor right now because, well, the guy I'm seeing now I actually want to stay with because he's the one that found the puzzle. He was like, how come it looks like you have been in chemo for the last 5 years? Because the toxins that I had been exposed to were stored in my fat. So every
Right.
time I lost weight or moved too much, it would release and burn
Yeah.
calories, burn that fat off. It would release those toxins into my system, and I'd re-poison myself. And just from losing weight, and I lost 125 pounds over 4 years. So it was a lot, and I did it as slow as possible
Ah,
because it was excruciating.
painful. Yeah.
But my doctor was like, it looks like you were on chemo because it's the same. Your body does the same thing with chemo because
Attacking
chemo is just
itself.
poisoning. Yeah,
Yeah.
you're poisoning yourself to get rid of the cancer. And that's basically how my blood work looked. But there was no notes anywhere onto why I was feeling, or how I was feeling. I mean, all they did was write the test results down. And that's the last 6 years of my medical is just me
Yeah.
being sick, me being better, me being sick, me being better. And
Oh,
it's like,
bless you.
so, but the cool thing is that I had a drive to live. Like I had no idea I had a drive to live, even on the days that I wanted to just
Carla.
stop. Because
Yeah.
there was plenty of days where I just really wanted to stop, and you can't give up on yourself, And I have a son; he's 17, and he was my motivator. Like I'm a single mom, and
Mm.
so
You didn't have a
that
choice.
was
You didn't have a choice. You had to be there for him. Yeah, I get it.
I
I
did.
get it.
I mean, I went over that in my head a couple times. I do have a choice. I could, but I don't want to.
No,
I don't want to do that to
no.
him. I don't want to do that to me. Like a huge part of my healing was also learning how to love myself more and to actually love myself.
Yeah.
And it's not an egotistical thing at all. And it really bothers me that you know our society kind of says, well, if you love yourself, then you're a narcissist. And that's not the kind of self love I'm talking about. That's not,
So,
narcissists actually don't love themselves. Like, that's not actually how a narcissist works.
yeah.
So, it's all the things that I went through built certain parts of my character in a completely different way. And I am a completely different person than I was 7 years ago when this all kind of started. And I'm
But
very grateful to be alive.
I love
So,
running through all of this is something that is intrinsically in you as a person is that creativity and that art. And now created this ability to go into companies and help people to um, unstress, de-stress themselves and find ways to be creative. And that creation can be finding more sales. Creation can be better marketing campaign. Creation can be getting on better with each other in the teams that they're part of, whatever the solution can be. So it's an amazing thing. Have you come across Michael Singer and his surrender experiment?
I have not.
Oh, goody. You're going to love it. Go find the book. He's an amazing man. But you talking about
You're
your
right.
meditation, he talks about
Mhm.
meditation and he did everything that his parents kind of didn't want him to do. He dropped out of school and he went and lived as a hippie in the forest and with nature but he became a billionaire as a result of all the stuff that he did. But he let the meditation guide his life totally.
Yeah.
And it was just so lovely to see that if he had a problem, he'd just go and meditate more. so that he could work out, to be told what he had to do. And it was just a beautiful, you finish the book and you put it, oh, yeah, I get it now. I get it. It's just so beautiful. And you'll be reading it going, I know. Because of that's what but it's if anybody out there has never experienced meditation, and obviously he's done it at a very high level from the point of view that he could meditate for hours and hours and hours, it still opens your eyes to the possibility of getting to know yourself and getting to understand who you are. Now, I'm not a massive meditator. I would rather walk along the beach and have that as my meditation and sit cross-legged on the floor and, light some candles. But you do need to have a headspace that's allowing creativity to come in, whatever that creativity can be. And then you have to get the busy out, the going on all the time. And why did you do this? And you shouldn't have done that. That little ego that keeps the gremlin inside of you that needs to be let out every so often and shoved away somewhere else. Hopefully you'll read that, but it's a fascinating book for anybody that's listening to this podcast.
What was the name of the book again?
It's called The Surrender Experiment by Michael Singer. Michael J. Singer? Michael Singer. Singer.
Cool.
So when you do your art now, is it for your own benefit, or do you sell it, or do you do commissions for people? Obviously you do the day job, which is going into companies and helping them, but what do you do?
Right. For my art, for my sculpting, I haven't done anything but for pleasure for that. I actually did my first ever live sculpt, which I thought was fascinating, that I had gotten to the age that I am and never actually had done a live sculpt before, where you have a model in the middle and she's on this rotating table and everybody, we just gather around her and sculpt her. It was super fun. And the people I met in that group were amazing and really, really good sculptors as well. So that was super fun. So by sculpting, I haven't really done much with it. You kind of go around and you're like, well, I could get into FX work or building masks for movies and stuff like that, but I haven't really explored it. And maybe I should, because I love doing it. It is so fun. And when it comes to my paintings and stuff, they have such a story. I actually want to show them. I just haven't been able to figure out how to do that, or who to contact, or what the actual, what is that?
What medium you want it to be?
Yeah. What is the demographic for my art? Because I honestly don't know. I know there is a demographic for it. I just haven't found the name of it yet, or the name of them yet.
I guess if you put it on Pinterest and just let it out there, then people will kind of collect around it when they like it, and then you kind of work out that that's what they've got in common, and then you can go, right, there's a gallery over here, and if you want to come, it's over here. So, and see where it goes from there. But make it visible. Just get it out there in some way, shape, or form. Don't worry about who it's going to just yet, because they'll find you. Probably they'll be able to find you. And I've seen some stuff, and I think it's gorgeous, absolutely gorgeous, because it's got story in it, but without being a story, if you see what I mean. It's got something in it that you can take from it, and my imagination goes a little bit woohoo. I can see that, I can feel, and I can take, and the emotion within it is just beautiful. And the stuff behind you, presumably that's your stuff as well. Yeah, if you're listening to this, I apologize. There are beautiful images behind Jessie, but go on to the Collaboration Global YouTube channel, and you will find the podcast on there as well, and you'll be able to see the pictures behind her. But yeah, you got to get your stuff out, Jessie. It's amazing, and it's got a story to tell for everybody.
Oh, sorry, my puppy. The biggest reason I'm going to totally ignore that, but the biggest reason that I want to show them in an actual show is not only to show them in the storyline as how they unfolded, but I also painted them with metallic and iridescent paints.
Wow.
So the really beautiful part about them is that what was instinctive for me to do, and I honestly didn't plan a lot of this, I would use the iridescent paints in certain ways in certain parts of the paintings, and then I would get done and realize that if I walked over here you could see this part of the painting.
Yeah,
And you
yeah.
walked over here, it looked totally different. And a
Oh,
whole
love it.
hidden message would be just show
Around
up.
them. Yeah, yeah, I love it.
Yeah. So it is really hard to photograph and it's really hard to replicate on like a print. I mean, due
Yeah,
to just that factor of it, I was actually looking at, I don't remember what they're called, but when you can move like a print and it changes what it
yes.
is, that's the only way I'd be able to do prints of them.
Oh,
What is it again? I'm not
can't
remembering,
remember.
but it's
I
like
know
a
it's
double
those
images.
images that I could never see.
Yeah.
I've got a funny eyesight, so I've been
No,
told,
no,
"Oh,
no, no,
you can
not
see the
those.
dolphin." I'm like, "No, I can't see the dolphin."
No, no, not
Not
those
those.
hidden images. They're like it's printed on like it's printed on like a triangle, right?
Right.
So
Yeah.
that this side of the triangle
Oh, I
is
see
that
what you
image,
mean.
and this
Yes.
side of the triangle is that image. So then,
Yeah.
depending on which way you look at it, that's the image you see, and
Mm.
you can have that stuff printed that way. And I think that's the way I'm going to have prints made if I do prints
Oh.
because
Watch this space.
some of them, an entire story is revealed underneath when you change
Yeah.
it and change the angle of how you're looking at it, which is also very metaphoric of seeing a different perspective from how it is illuminated by the light, which
So
is
much.
just
There's so much in there, isn't there? Oh, yeah.
so funny. Yeah, it's so,
Well,
yeah, I
listen,
love
if
it.
anybody wanted to see your images, is there a website they can go to? And also, if they want to have a chat with you about working in their company and creating or releasing the innovation potential that is in someone's company, how do they get hold of you? What's the easiest way to catch you?
The easiest way to find my artwork is on Instagram, and that is Jessie with an I, no E, Fraser dot VOL2, volume 2. And then I also have sculptor underscore Jessie Fraser. So the Jessie Fraser dot VOL2 is kind of all my art, but mostly my paintings. And then the sculptor underscore Jessie Fraser is just my sculpture work. And then I also have a website for my consulting and creative facilitation work, which is speakerjessiefraser.com. And it's just JESSI, no E. And yeah, so they can just go on there and check out my stuff. And if they want to contact me, I'm also on LinkedIn. Jessie Fraser. I put Jessica Fraser here because that's kind of that's my artist name is Jessica. Because for some reason when I was a kid, I didn't like being called Jessica. So I would always just say Jessica, and Ka would always be separate from Jessie. So I thought it would be fun because there's actually quite a few Jessie Frasers, including an actress in Hollywood named Jessie
Oh,
Fraser. So
but you know
I don't want
what?
to be confused.
You've just given me a childhood memory for my daughters. We went to Florida once and we bought these amazing puppets for them, where a bit like Muppet puppets, where they've got the hands going and you put your hand up there. And one of them was this poodle that was very glamorous. And so I said, "What do you want to call her?" And they went, "Jessica." I said, "What, Jessica?" "No, no, no, Jessica." So this poodle
Yes.
hand would go like Jessica like this all the time. It's hilarious to see these like 8 and 10-year-olds with these two puppets. The other one was just like a mongrel type dog that was rough and ready. But Jessica was very glamorous. So that's brought me back a lovely memory. I'd forgotten about that. Thank
Oh,
you.
that's so funny. Yeah, that's perfect.
And
That's
of course,
exactly. I just don't have the hair. I don't have the
well,
hair to do it.
you can imagine. Just imagine there. And if anybody wants to meet this Jessica, um, hopefully she'll be coming along to some of our Collaboration Global sessions in the future. So if you want to come to our guest session, you can find that on Eventbrite and you can just go to collaborationglobal.org, the website, and you can book on to the next session. And fingers crossed, you'll see Jessie in the audience there as well. And if you do bump into her somewhere on LinkedIn or in Collaboration Global, just mention she should be part of the CoGlo community because she would be absolutely amazing with us lot. No pressure, Jessie. Okay, just
Oh,
say
of
it
course
out
not.
loud.
Of course
But thank you
not.
so
I'm
much for your
also
time. I'm absolutely
yeah.
appreciative of what you can do for companies. I can see that so clearly. But I love the journey that you've told us about art being something of who you are and that we all have that in us and we can choose to find it in different ways. So don't be intimidated by the art world or the creative world. It's just something that we've all got access to for our own mental stability. So I think that comes through loud and clear with you. So thank you so much for joining us today. It's been absolutely brilliant.
Yeah. Thank you.